Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm Jade Scott. This is GrowthRx, and today we are joined by Sam Suke. How are you from Melbourne, Lilydale, Victoria, amidst the lockdown? How are you going?
Yeah, really well, Jade. Thanks for having me on the podcast, and hello to everyone out there in cyberspace who's watching us live, and for those watching later, welcome to you as well.
Thank you for joining us. You are the first guest from our finalist series from the Allied Health Awards. Congratulations on your finalist nomination for 2021.
Thank you very much, Jade. Yeah, it's pretty exciting to be part of the group, and looking forward to next month to see who the lucky recipients are.
Yeah, under the category of, I'm just looking to make sure that we are live into the group, which we are. And I think
My screen says we are.
Yeah, and I'm having a few issues with what is happening. Hello, everybody. Oh, there we go. Everyone can still see us. The joys of going live, hey? So in an effort to introduce you, I've been researching your background. Obviously, there is good reason why you are nominated in the category of Physiotherapist of the Year. Not only have you got your own business and a successful physiotherapist in your own right and clinic owner, but you've done a lot of postgraduate study and research, particularly in what we're talking about today, the mind-body connection, which I can't wait to hear a lot more about, but in particular, how allied health professionals and practitioners' words can actually have an impact on a person's pain and performance. And you also do some teaching and mentoring through some of the universities, through Monash, Melbourne University, La Trobe University, and Swinburne. So lots of teaching and mentoring up your sleeve. But what I really want to hear about today, which stood out the most, is probably two things. Firstly, your experience as a clown. I'm going to let you explain it, but I love the concept of Patch Adams, and you're the modern day physiotherapist Patch Adams. Am I right in asking that?
You could say that. I wouldn't claim it myself. Have you seen the movie Patch Adams, Jade?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So some of you out there may have seen the movie Patch Adams. I definitely recommend you check out the Robin Williams starring movie named after Patch, who is a real person. This year, I believe he will be turning 76 years old. He's quite a character. He's a very tall man, approximately 6'3", and has half a head of blue hair and another half of grey hair, quite long too. And he is an American chap who believes that laughter is a true medicine. And after he finished his medical studies, he decided that instead of giving out scripts and surgeries, he wanted to make people laugh. And he found that the best way of improving the well-being of other people was through play and through humor. And so he started traveling around the world, at first to Russia, taking a group of international volunteers who all dressed up as clowns over to Russia back when it was the Soviet Union and when the United States and Russia weren't the best of friends, and perhaps they're still not, because he believed that that was a way of bridging borders and bringing the world closer together. And we now see that the November clowns go to Russia every November. Sadly, it didn't happen last year and probably will happen in a modified form if it does happen this year. And we visit schools and orphanages and hospitals, and just bring a bit of colour and a bit of light. And I was privileged to join Patch and the team twice, in 2016 and 2018, I believe it was. And I have a miniature bike that I ride around. It's smaller than my knee, a ukulele, and a propeller hat.
Wow.
So yeah,
and you literally dress up like a clown?
Yeah, red noses are compulsory.
Yeah. Wow.
And we don't just clown in those locations. We're in full clown costume the whole time we're in Russia. So that means every meal we have, every time we walk down the streets, every moment we are looking to brighten people's day. And I do believe that we have just as much of an impact on those walking down the street to work as we do on those who are in the hospital wards.
Absolutely. And it's just such a nice, uplifting story amongst everything that everyone's going through at the moment, is just the importance of laughter and medicine and trying to stay positive amongst all this uncertainty. And the second thing that I really liked finding out about you is you're a lifeguard. and even associated with the helicopter rescue. So not just like a beach. I mean, you're, in the thick of it, jumping out of helicopters. Is that right?
Technically, we have to step out of the helicopter, otherwise the chopper shakes too much. But yes, I served for 6 summers with the Westpac Lifesaver Rescue Helicopter Service, and it was a great opportunity to volunteer with other dedicated lifesavers, and got to see a lot of the Victorian coastline, which was beautiful, and try to prevent things from ever getting to the point of needing to step out of the helicopter, and be proactive like we try to in healthcare. We want to stop things from becoming an issue so that we don't have people in pain or people in danger. So it was a good thing, and nice to be part of the Australian tradition.
Yeah. And look, this is why I love so much being part of the Allied Health Awards and being able to have conversations and meeting people like yourself and showcasing what you're doing beyond just the consultation room. There's so much that we can deliver as an allied health professional. And it certainly is incredible recognition for what you're doing and being one of the finalists this year. So good luck come September. So the reason, I guess, why we're all here is also to showcase some of your work with your minor thesis and some of the stuff that I guess is a little bit new with the language and the impact that we can have through verbal communication and even body language and those sorts of things. So I am going to hand over to you and let you do your thing and talk a little bit more about mind-body unconnection. And I think you've got some slides and everything available for us, and I'll just be busy as I always do, writing down some questions, and I will join you towards the end to sort of brainstorm a little bit more about this stuff and hopefully give some of our viewers some different ways to connect with you and find out more about your work afterwards. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Jade. And just as I'm setting up the screen share, I'll invite all of you, please submit your questions to Jade through the various channels that you've got available to you. Zoom does tell me that the screen is sharing now. Is that correct, Jade? The screen is sharing. Cool. So that'll show up exercise thought physiotherapy, which does aim to blend in a philosophy of physiotherapy the mind and the body, because we don't believe the mind and body are connected. At Exercise Thought, we believe that you cannot connect things unless you disconnect them. And we don't believe that the mind and body were ever disconnected to begin with. It's all about looking after a person, and that person is an integration of not various parts, but various layers that we can address in our therapies. So we encourage people to exercise thought. We encourage them to think, which is why we focus so much on education here at Exercise Thought, not just for our clients, but also for our students who are future physiotherapists, but also for our team, our practitioners and our concierge staff. We want to really put a lot of deliberate thought into providing a holistic and really intentional therapy. So that's a bit about our philosophy and how we like to go about things. And we'll move into expectancy intervention, which is the technical name for the effect that words can have on pain and the effect that words can have on performance. Expectancy intervention is something that you will find in the literature. And I believe it's the best phrase to describe what we're talking about. Other phrases that are similar but not quite the same are positive or negative therapeutic suggestion. Looks like we're back to face-to-face. Fantastic. Thank you, Jade. And I'll go to the app. Here we go. So yes, therapeutic suggestion is another phrase out there, but sometimes a suggestion is not therapeutic. Sometimes we tell someone, you're going to have this for the rest of your life, or be careful, don't bend your back, or don't lift those things because it's going to stir you up. So we can provide suggestions as allied health professionals that are damaging and are fear-inducing and anxiety-producing. And we have to be responsible for our words, just as we are responsible for the actions of our hands. And you mentioned it's a new idea. I'd question that, because the Bible, which was written over 2,000 years ago, talks about a wise tongue is able to heal and a foolish tongue will cut like a sword. That's translated from Hebrew, so it might not be exactly that. And still, nonetheless, I think the point is that if we are mindful of our words, we can help people through conversation. And I think that it's an unrecognized, or at least an underappreciated part of what we do. And there are some studies, actually. We produced a meta-analysis with some students from Monash this year, looking at the effect of expectancy intervention on pain. And they focused on non-surgical pain. And they found that there was an effect, a statistically significant effect. And actually, now that we've come to think of it, there might actually be a way, Jade. Is there a way, Jade, that we could share that poster with your GrowthRx community, or post it in some way?
Yeah, we'll be able to add it to the group, definitely.
Fantastic. Yeah, Georgia and Stefan that Monash did a great job on that. And the previous year's group of students produced a meta-analysis on the effect of expectancy intervention on movement, on physical movement and performance, and found that we can improve people's running times and the quality of their movement with the words that we say. And I think it might be useful, Jade, to share some examples of the expectations that we create or shape through our conversation with patients or with clients. Any ideas that have come to your mind as I've just been talking?
I think is it more where your own internal bias comes from and your ability to motivate based upon what you believe the outcomes should be over where they are in their journey? Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So as an example, I had a very interesting a case just before this podcast of a 19-year-old girl who has a twitch in her neck. She's got an extremely tonic sternocleidomastoid muscle down the right side of her neck, and this twitch has existed for 8 months, and it's aggravated by stress, and is also aggravated by thinking about her twitch. And you can see it in the conversation. As soon as we talk about her sport and her work and her pursuits, there's no twitch at all. But as soon as she starts talking about the twitch, it happens up to 10 oscillations at a time, and in her experience, it can be up to 2 minutes at a time. And it disrupts her focus, it disrupts her work, her university studies. And when we set the goal of not reducing the twitch, but we set the goal of having a restful head and neck, and a relaxed head and neck, she can begin to visualize and focus on the outcome that she desires, which is a restful head and neck, instead of having no twitch, because the focus of no twitch brings about the image of a twitch and actually aggravates her symptoms, in the same way as someone with back pain or neck pain would be better served, I believe, by having the goal of a confident, comfortable, supple spine instead of reducing pain.
Yeah. I mean, it makes so much sense when you sort of put it like that. But I guess unless you're actively thinking about the effect of your words, you sometimes formulate, would you say, bad habits as a practitioner just through language alone. And I mean, a lot of this is the psychology. We don't learn this psychology at uni. I don't think any professions do. I think, in fact, even with the biopsychosocial patterns that we deal with every day, it's something that is happening more and more at university. I mean, you talk on this level. What is happening at university level at the moment in those sorts of spaces? Is there more psychology component in the curriculum these days amongst physiotherapists?
Yes, I've been very impressed with the students that have been coming through recently. We've had a large chunk of students from Swinburne University who they have whole subjects on knowing self and that self-awareness process, which I believe is a really great insight into such a personal profession as the allied health professions are. But yeah, certainly the other universities, La Trobe, Monash, Melbourne, they are heavily emphasising the biopsychosocial model, and very aware that these psychological factors and social factors can influence our patients' state and recovery. I do think that there's an inclination with the biopsychosocial model towards etiology, towards the things that cause the current state of being. Looking back at the past, all right, childhood trauma, car accident, stress at work, all these things that have happened before this present moment. creating the conditions or creating the situation for this to occur within this individual, which I think it's got its pros and it's got its cons. The alternative is the teleological approach, where we focus on goals. And we say that the person has not come in to see Jade for an osteopathy treatment because they're feeling pain and because they've had stress at work and because they had a car accident. They're not seeing Jade because of those past events. They're actually seeing Jade because they believe that Jade is going to enable them to live the life that they want to live, to be comfortable, to be happy, to participate in these social games such as work and home life. It's actually the future that is motivating the current moment. It's the goals that stimulate the person's behavior. So I think we could do better as health professionals at adopting more of a teleological approach, using the biopsychosocial framework to understand the different layers of the person, and then also focusing on the desired outcome, on the future, on the forward, instead of looking back at things that we have no control over and may feel helpless because of that.
And I guess that's where that expectancy comes from, but making sure that this sort of stuff is addressed very, very early on with a practitioner. So how does this tie in? I mean, it's so at the forefront at the moment, this practitioner directed versus patient-centered care. I mean, to be honest, I can't believe we're having conversations about this. I just assume, as a practitioner who's been in practice for 20 years, it's the lesser of two evils. You just adapt your personality to the person in front of you. And based upon psychometrics that we know, some people need different behaviors. They need different they have different internal drivers. Some people love direction and actually seek and crave structured, systematized process, whereas other people want to be really a part of the journey, so to speak, and be in control of that decision-making process. It's about adaptability, isn't it? Not one or the other, isn't it? Isn't it both at the best of times?
Absolutely, it's about adaptability, and it's definitely about seeing the person in front of you. It's something I learned from Patch. He's always said it's far more important to understand the kind of person with the disease than to understand the kind of disease with the person. And that's exactly what you're talking about, is seeing the individual in front of you and being able to present ourselves as clinicians, present ourselves in a way that is therapeutic. That means that we talk, or we posture, or we act in a way that is calming and improving for that individual. Or maybe they need encouragement, maybe they need discipline. I had a client earlier this week, met him for the first time, and he said, "Sam, I can be a lazy bastard, and I want you to have permission to tell me when I'm being lazy." Excuse my curse language, but so I think you're exactly right. I think we've got to be adaptable to the individual in front of us, and I've made the mistake before of when I first started exploring expectancy interventions. I went to one extreme where I believed that the word pain itself would be associated with all things negative. It pains me to tell you this, Jade. Oh, gee, you're a pain. Oh, that's a pain in the neck. I couldn't think of one example of how we use this word in a positive light, and so I actually I refused to say the word for some time because I was of the belief that the word would actually be detrimental to someone's recovery, and that wasn't a good idea, because saying the word pain for some patients is an acknowledgement of the suffering that they're experiencing, and we need to acknowledge that suffering in order for them to feel, in order for some people to feel confident that we actually understand the concern with which they're presenting. And if we don't have their confidence that we're taking their problem seriously, then the therapy's lost. So I think it's important to be able to sit with them in the dark times, but then also to be able to walk with them towards a better future.
I couldn't agree more. I think sometimes validation is the key to trust, because it makes people feel listened to and makes people feel heard. I always look back on one of my favorite older patients of sort of that Greek ethnic descent, and he was just hilarious. And he would come in every week and he'd say to me, "I'm your worst patient today, aren't I? I'm your worst. Am I the worst person? Is my back the worst back you've ever seen?" I'd be like,
"Tell me it's the
yes,
worst."
it is, Stefano. Like it is. His real name.
Yeah.
Just chose a random name.
Of course.
But he just wanted to know that he was the worst, and it just validated him.
Yeah.
And then he would sort of calm down. He's like, "My wife doesn't believe me. Why you believe me? You believe me." So that, the validation for so many people is just so important. As I said, they feel heard, and it's a great step towards building trust and connections, which ultimately relationship management is what we do. It's one of the services we provide.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
But I love that concept, as you said, when it comes to pain and seeing it negatively and putting that spin on it, as you do a lot with positive psychology, you turn something traumatic into a post-traumatic growth. So taking that next step and making sure that you can reflect on it, as you were saying, self-awareness is so important. It's one of the keys to emotional intelligence, is actually taking that for what it is, accepting it, and then working out how you can grow and evolve from it. So I love this concept. I love it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. How can we actually transform, like an alchemist, transform this lesser experience into something greater? There is a great book that I'd encourage people to read, even if you could just find a summary of it, it's worthwhile. The Courage to Be Disliked. The title of the book is actually deceiving. It's not about courageously having people dislike you so much as it is about other very important ideas. And they actually talk about trauma in this book, and it's a conversation between a guru and a young man. And the guru is telling the young man that trauma does not exist. And the young man is saying, "Well, that's impossible. I've been traumatized. Many people are traumatized. Of course it exists." And the guru asks, "Well, if Jade and Sam walk across the same road at the same time, and a car narrowly misses both of them, and Jade walks away grateful for her life and thankful for the opportunity that she has to live another day, and Sam walks away shuddering and shivering and nervously rocking himself back and forward in the corner. Sam's traumatized, but Jade is revitalized. It wasn't the walking across the road that was traumatic, it was Sam's response." So it's a it's a controversial thing to propose that trauma doesn't exist, but it's not the circumstance, it's the...
Yeah, it's one of my favorite studies where, everyone talks about the fact that we learn so much from failure. And there's a study that I was looking at that actually indicated that failure alone teaches us nothing. It's only those who fail and try again that we learn. So yes, you need to fail in the first place, but if you just fail and leave it at that, you've actually learned nothing. So I think it's really important how our past experiences form who we are, and also the biases that we find ourselves in the way that we look at things when it comes to pain and pain association, just how our parents experience pain as a child growing up, whether we have gone through that post-traumatic growth. So, which I think ties into that anti-fragility stuff that you
nice segue there, Jade. Well done.
I've only jumped into your next slide because when you share your slide, we miss your face, and of course we want to see you. So I'm going to suggest maybe not sharing your slide and then maybe talking us through that concept.
Sure thing. Yeah, and just one last note on expectancy intervention before we talk about anti-fragility, because often practitioners will ask, well, what's an example of an expectancy intervention, and how can we use these in common practice? And so I'll share a few examples from the research. The knowing are predictions about therapeutic effect, and the second is the conduct of an assessment and the ways that we conduct assessments in creating expectations. So the predictions of therapeutic response could be the research studies where they have someone recovering in a hospital after surgery, and they have them hooked up to an IV, and they say, "All right, Jade, I'm going to pop this medication into your IV now, and it's going to reduce your pain." And in some cases, they had an opioid based analgesia introduced into the IV, and they found that with the suggestion that this is going to reduce your pain, a saline infusion was just as effective as an opioid infusion that didn't have a suggestion. So we can actually activate opioid-based endogenous pathways with the expectations that we create that have a similar effect to an opioid-based analgesia. They did a study in China, which we might not get ethics for in other countries, where they actually said the phrase, "This will make you worse," and you'll feel more. Actually, no, I speak out of turn. They did that same study in Italy as well. This will make your pain worse. And again, they introduced saline, and it did indeed make people's pain worse. So sometimes we predict, oh, this massage is going to help you, this massage is going to hurt you. We probably wouldn't say that, but we might say, don't sit for too long, because if you sit for too long, you'll be in pain. Maybe we should say, well, if you stand up regularly, then you'll feel more comfortable. We can use the carrot or the stick, I guess.
And I'm probably going down a whole different rabbit hole here, but knowing the science behind this and the power of placebo and language expectation, is this something that some practitioners probably already draw on, but is it unethical? Yeah. Or if you are going to improve somebody's life by drawing on some of this, is this something that we maybe could be using more of but don't?
Unethical. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So because there's a sense of manipulation about it, isn't there?
I guess as though we're behind it, isn't it? I suppose.
Exactly. And that's where these research studies have to be conducted in a way that people have signed up to being a part of it. Yeah. It takes a special kind of person to sign up for that kind of study, I reckon. And look, it depends. Like one of the other studies was women recovering post cesarean section, and this was actually done in South Australia. And they asked two sets of questions. The first set of questions was, we're interested in understanding how much pain you have after this surgical trauma. Can you please rate your pain from 0 to 10? And then the second group, they said, we're interested to understand how you're recovering. Could you please rate your comfort levels from 0 to 10? So the word recovery instead of trauma, and comfort levels instead of pain levels. And so it comes down to what we focus on. The ethics of it, I think the definition of placebo is something that will heal, like an intention to heal. And so if someone says, oh, I believe that waving crystals over my head reduces my risk of contracting COVID, as perhaps some people in Byron Bay believe at the moment with the crystal sales, crystals being stripped from the shelves in the supermarkets with their recent lockdown.
Just as valuable as toilet paper, huh?
Well, just as valuable as toilet paper. Yeah, if someone firmly has the belief that crystals do reduce their risk of contracting COVID, then we don't know what effect that strong belief has. And maybe by robbing someone of their placebo, we might actually be doing a disservice. So I think we've got to choose carefully before we intervene and say, well, no, you shouldn't use crystals to prevent COVID, because I'm not saying we should be advocating for it, but I just think sometimes if someone's on a good run with something that they believe is helping them, we might actually do more harm by shattering that belief.
I guess it comes down to the intention to deceive. Like if your intentions are good and in the patient's best interest, and you are genuinely helping them on that journey, and there's a significant improvement from doing so, then I guess maybe you could reflect differently. I'll never forget, I had a patient who was under the care of an oncologist who was suffering quite badly. She'd been deemed palliative with her cancer, and her condition was deteriorating. And somebody had told her that by drinking carrot juice all day, every day, for every meal, she would get better. Okay. And miraculously, two things happened. The first was she did get better. Not in regards to the cancer, but her energy levels, her ability to interact and perform activities of daily living all improved. But she turned orange. She literally got keratosis. and turned orange, which was equally unhealthy. But in her mind, if she hadn't turned orange, I mean, her life changed because her mindset changed. So the placebo towards that, you know, genuinely was placebo. I don't think there was any science behind drinking carrot juice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But her mindset, her energy, and her ability to engage in life certainly improved just because her mindset did. So the power of words, I guess, and my question to you then is, knowing this is why you're so passionate about teaching it. Surely as practitioners, knowing the power behind this, we've got a duty of care to understand the effects of this. We all should in private practice and in healthcare and in life, really.
Yeah, and this is not, look, there are some examples in history where, you know, one utterance has changed a person's whole life. And, you know, I think it's possible for that to happen in the present day. You know, you meet people who, the classic is, you know, I saw a surgeon 10 years ago and my surgeon told me I'll need a new hip replacement. Or, yeah, I spoke to the doctor and the doctor said I've got bone on bone, and that the only solution is a knee replacement. Like, if you give someone that strong expectation, some people are able to recall 30 years later one sentence that the surgeon said to them, and it's probably not just surgeons, but I think because they have a gravitas about them, a tremendous credibility by virtue of their training and their title. It seems to be more memorable than my physio or my osteo said to me 30 years ago, yada, yada, yada. I haven't heard that said as often. So yes, I think we need to be mindful of what we say and what we do. It can be paralyzing if we think too much about it as well. So if we stay relaxed in the way that we speak, I think that's equally important as choosing the right words, because that does signal in a non-verbal way that if we're not stressed and worried about their condition, and if we're calm and calmly confident that they're going to improve, then that's going to signal in a way an expectation that they'll get better.
Yeah, and it does come back to, I mean, there's no secret that I love emotional intelligence and the science behind emotions and neurology. And when you are explaining things to people, you can either light up the neocortex with the ration and the reason and the problem solving. You can be one of those practitioners. Or I'm such an emotive practitioner. I tie into the emotional event and the outcomes, and that lights up a whole different part of the brain. That lights up the limbic part of the brain, which is attached to our memory center, which is why I guess words, if they ignite a certain emotion in somebody, whether it be anger, fear, anxiety, happiness, as soon as it's in that part of our brain, we remember it. It goes into our memory bank, and we as a practitioner become memorable. What we says and what we say and what we do is memorable because it triggers a certain emotion. So would you say that a lot of this language does tie back into that?
Yeah. I haven't thought so much about emotion. I mean, one of the studies did measure the amount of worry that people felt after a positive and negative suggestion. I certainly agree with you on the surface that emotion would be deeply related to our memory, and there is that saying that people will forget what you say and forget what you do, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. So I can only imagine that that's true. I'm just not capable to speak on that from a research perspective, because I've not come across any studies that look at the effect of words on emotion.
My excitement level of drawing everything back to emotions.
But that is our job, though, isn't it? It's to help people feel better. Is feeling what's a feeling, isn't it? It is an emotion. It's not strictly nuts and bolts physical change that we're seeking. Yeah. Even though we call ourselves physical therapists.
Yeah.
Anti-fragility. Let's go into that. What do you know about it? What have you heard about it?
All I know is when I announced this session into the group, I hadn't really heard of the concept of anti-fragility. In fact, not at all. Maybe I should be reading a lot more, and I'm missing a lot of research papers. But I know that one of the guys in my team was really excited about this concept and sent me like a clap emoji, in that he was really excited to hear more about it. So, I'm sitting here bracing myself like a lot of the rest of the audience, because for me, it is something new. I'm sure that it's not a new concept, but I'm excited to hear more about antifragility.
The concept, or at least the phrase, has to be attributed to Nicholas Nassim Taleb, one of my favorite authors. I definitely recommend that you guys look up Nicholas Taleb. He's actually he was in finance for the first part of his career, and then he became quite a prolific author, I believe. And what he was searching for when he came across, or when he actually created the phrase anti-fragility or anti-fragile, he was seeking an antonym for the word fragile. So if you'd had a guess, Jade, what would you say the opposite of fragile is?
Strong, resilient?
Yeah, okay. So resilient is the most common one, or strong. So if something is fragile, let's say this glass here. Let's say I wanted to send this glass over to you in Williamstown. So I popped it in a box and gave it to the courier, and the courier took the box and then took it to you. We might want to put a fragile sticker on the side of that box so that he knew not to shake the box and drop the box, because a fragile thing, when stressed, would break, like the glass. Glass is fragile. A resilient thing, let's say it was not super resilient, but more resilient would be the case of these AirPods. If you drop them, they don't break. They are resilient. But that's not exactly the opposite of fragile. So fragile is under stress, it breaks. The opposite of that is not under stress, it stays the same. Being resilient or being robust, staying the same under stress or under chaos or under uncertainty, is not the opposite of not the opposite of fragile. The opposite of fragile is something that gets better because of the stress, something that improves from uncertainty and benefits from chaos. And we know this. Post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
Exactly, post-traumatic growth. So if you lift weights in the gym, you sustain microscopic tears in your muscles, and then 2 days later, after you've slept enough, the muscles become stronger. The muscles are anti-fragile. Same thing with our bones. When we put stress through the bones, they increase bone density. Human beings are anti-fragile, and you've demonstrated it nicely with post-traumatic growth. So the anti-fragile concept is a state of mind or a response wherein a thing or a person or a group of people or maybe a whole species benefits from chaos, uncertainty, and stress. And I believe that if we look at this last 20 months or so that we've had with COVID-19 still circulating around the world, there are different ways that we can respond to it. We can either say, all right, this physio clinic is going to suffer because of COVID-19, or it's actually going to become better because of COVID-19. And how would we behave with the belief and with the goal that this practice, exercise, thought improves because of COVID-19? And how would we as individuals seek to be anti-fragile in this current circumstance? So, I'm sure there's plenty of examples in your own life, Jade, because you are an anti-fragile person. GrowthRx, your studies at Harvard, the fantastic achievements of your work teams, largely thanks to you sustaining an illness in an earlier part of your life and determinedly saying that this is actually going to be something that not only do you conquer and move beyond, but something that you actually benefit from, and that it gives you a new and renewed outlook on life. And look at you. I mean, you've done a fantastic job out of that. And maybe if you wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but if you didn't have cancer, maybe GrowthRx and the other things that you're enjoying doing wouldn't exist.
Look, and it's so refreshing to hear you say that. Thank you, firstly, for the compliments. But secondly, when I was going through my recovery and rehab and I was told, you'll never treat again, one of the common terms that people kept throwing at me was, oh, you're so resilient. You're so resilient through all this. And it became quite frustrating for me in the end, because by definition, resilience, the old Latin term, comes from resilire, which means to bounce back to your original form or state. I didn't want to bounce back. I didn't want to go back to the person I was before I went through that, because I learned so much about myself and what I wanted for the future that's where GrowthRx came from, is what's my prescription for growth. I don't want to be resilient. I don't want to pretend like it never happened, but I also don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't want to be naively optimistic that everything's going to be okay. Resilience wasn't my solution. And if I had known this word anti-fragile back then, I think I would have really embraced it. I do, I guess, resonate with that word a lot, because you're certainly not fragile, but also I didn't want to be seen as strong, because I was happy to be vulnerable and fall apart and cry when I was going through it all. So anti-fragile, I mean, it's a great new term that I will thank you for introducing me to, but I think I will certainly embrace, and I can understand why the powerful mindset of this anti-fragile, as opposed to just be resilient and bounce back and you can get through this and you can be strong, is just that missing piece, I think, in a lot of patients' puzzle, I guess. Is that right in your?
Yeah. I mean, you've got it, and you had it the whole time through that transformation that you experienced, and perhaps you didn't have the word for it, but the sentiment was there. And yeah, I'm interested to hear now. Now that you're familiar with the phrase, Jade, in what way have your team, your team of osteopaths, and the broader team of multiple disciplines, in what way have they benefited, improved, become better, grown through COVID-19?
Yeah, look, gosh, I get emotional when I talk about my team, because right now, I am very transparent with them, and I tell them when I'm doing it hard, and this responsibility fatigue that we carry around as clinic owners, this constant need to make changing decisions as the goalposts are moving, is really hard. And I think when I finally decided to translate that back to my team and say, hey, this is tough, I'm struggling, I'm just hanging on at the moment, the ability to come together and show a united force, and that gratitude is the word that I would probably want to say. Some of them, their shifts are being reduced at the moment because patients, particularly out near us, we're in a hotspot. Patients are just disappearing. Days are falling apart before their eyes. And, I've asked and I've pleaded with a lot of them to take a bit of a hit and reduce their full-time hours down to part-time to get through this lockdown. And all of them, the common thread through it all is, I'm just so grateful to be able to be working. I'm grateful to be able to be supporting our patients. I'm grateful that I'm going to have a job at the end of this and we're going to come out better. So you're absolutely right. They do have this anti-fragile mindset, but I think it's very hard to do alone. Am I right in saying that? Is anti-fragile, the value comes from people around you. And I think that's, for me, that's what I'm so impressed, and I'm so proud of them, because they're coming together. They're realizing that I think they are a little bit stronger to get through this and to be anti-fragile when they're united and, I guess all in this together. Is that ridiculous cliche that we're talking about? Because we are certainly not. My poor
High School Musical
are not going through this like we are, but that anti-fragile notion of not being alone as well.
Yeah. Well, if you are getting into the books, Jade, another one you might like is Humankind, wherein the author proposes that the reason that humanity became the globe dominating species that we are today is not because we were smarter or stronger. We don't have any particular claws or teeth or great armor on us with soft soft sacks of water mostly. We are more kind to each other than other species, is the theory. And the theory is built upon a few things, but one is that Neanderthals were actually much stronger than us. They're all built like elite athletes, and they're all actually quite smarter than us too. They developed more sophisticated tools. They were smarter hunters. The difference between the Neanderthals and us is that when one of us broke a bone and was unable to walk, that we would actually help that bone to be reset, to mend, and then to nurture that person until they got better. It was the discovery of healed bones after fractures had been sustained that some people believe was the beginning of civilization, and was the beginning of humanity and Homo sapien beginning to evolve or progress beyond that of other species such as the Neanderthal and other such species. So it's our kindness towards each other, it's the trust towards each other, which is highlighted during times of trial, which may bring about the anti-fragile response. And so perhaps we don't need each other to be anti-fragile, because we know that biology does respond well to stress, and it's only the random genetic mutations that enable us to actually evolve, according to Darwin. But certainly I think the human race does benefit from the kindness and trust of others, and that does enable us to be more anti-fragile than if we didn't have each other.
So through evolution, we've become more empathetic?
I'm not sure if evolution made us more empathetic, or if there was a random mutation that created a group of empathetic things over here and a group of less empathetic things over here, and it just so happened that these ones did better. But I guess if you were not an empathetic leader, if you were a tyrant, people wouldn't want to work for you. They wouldn't want to follow you. They wouldn't respect you or trust you. The best hunter is not the one that can kill the animal and take it home. It's the one that shares it around afterwards. The best boss is not the one who can bring in the biggest number of clients or the largest number of dollars. It's the person who can create that momentum and that resource, but then share it around generously. And there's a few examples about how you've done that as well, with buying seats at tables for events that get cancelled and other unfortunate things, but great examples of how you've supported your team and been an empathetic leader.
Yeah, and I think just that, exactly what we're talking about. The Allied Health Awards, which everyone's so excited about, would normally a networking event. I mean, Serena's done such an incredible job. That's going to be pivoted online. Some of the benefits from that we're still yet to see, but people understand that times are changing and just see the best for it. And it's a mean feat. It actually is more effort to do a normal live event than to go virtually. So people are finding that inner strength that they never had before. Well, I mean, your clinic in particular, I'd love to know from you. I mean, you're talking about this now personally. How are you better off for COVID? I mean, without being that sickeningly positive person that's like, yay, yay. I mean, where have you kind of had to knuckle down and dig deep and look to the future and go, you know what, this is going to be okay because it has to be.
You're right. If we become too rah-rah, everything is awesome, we lose people's trust because they don't believe that we're actually understanding what they're going through, and it's also a bit tiring for people as well. So how have exercise thought benefited from COVID? There's a few examples. The first is the universities were reeling about 15 months ago. Placements were being cancelled left, right, and centre. There were students at risk of not graduating. Heaps of students at risk of not graduating. So these are people who are dedicated 4 or more years to studying a particular profession with a view to then working in that profession, and then being told, sorry, COVID's cancelling placements, you won't be able to graduate. So we then had to figure out, well, if telehealth is good enough for our patients and our clients, then maybe telehealth's good enough for student placement. And we had no idea if it was going to work or not, but we jumped in and we had 5 students the first time. We had 5 students on Zoom on a laptop screen just over there. And They sat in on every consult, and we actually discovered some unexpected benefits of that approach. And the unexpected benefits are that the students can conduct research in real time during a consultation. So they can look up a journal article, they can research a different diagnosis, they can compare different diagnoses, they can understand which subjective and objective evidence supports and negates each potential diagnosis, because there's a clinical reasoning framework that we gave them that enables them to actually understand which diagnosis is most likely based on the information presented during the consultation. So it's a diagnostic skill and a clinical reasoning that they normally wouldn't develop, because they would sit in a corner or maybe touch a client during a consultation, but the opportunity to actually sit down and nut out, well, why is this the diagnosis and why is this the best treatment plan? That's something that they would have to do at the end of the day, which is unlikely to happen because they're probably going to be tired by the time they get home at the end of the day, or they've got work to go to. So they're probably going to do less. So saving time because they don't have to leave home is an advantage. They can do it from their own home. Having that real-time research is an advantage. Having the team of students is really advantageous as well. There's a constant conversation through Messenger or through Zoom chats where the students exchange ideas and ask questions. What are we doing this test for? Maybe we should do this treatment instead. Oh, what research do we have to support that? Oh, we've got the yada. So they actually become a little community of learners, and they teach so much. They teach each other so much, as well as learn from the exposure to real cases. And students are actually telling us that they prefer this model of placement over the individual model. And it's not perfect. It's by far from perfect, but it's got some advantages. And another one of the advantages is that we can graduate more students. That's pretty big. We can meet more students, which is handy for recruiting. We were able to recruit our second physio through one of those placements. And the other thing is, if we're going in and out of lockdowns, doesn't mean we're cancelling and restarting placements. We just keep rolling through. And when lockdown allows us to have a third person in this room, which is currently illegal, we can have a student in the room, and we rotate them. So we have the students with face-to-face experience and with the team-based Zoom experience. So that's it's also more financially sustainable as well. Instead of having I think it's $4 an hour for a student to be placed with us here, you multiply that by 3 or 4 or 5 students at a time, and it becomes a bit more viable. So that's one thing. Another thing is, people out there are struggling, and if you simply offer to help them during that time in any way that you can, it makes them feel good, makes them feel cared for, and I think that's a therapy in itself, but it's also an advantage, because if people feel better, that's our job. And if we're doing our job, then they'll recommend us to their family and their friends and their colleagues and whatnot. And we have also seen that there's been a lot of injuries owing to lockdown, and we shouldn't celebrate the suffering of other people. But it has to be said, nonetheless, that when people get injured, we get work. So I think that the sports, local community sport, starting and stopping, means people are deconditioned and then overloaded and deconditioned, overloaded. Yeah. So I think there's there's something in that.
As you say, it's a different reward for service. I mean, most of the time we go to work, we go through the hustle and the grind and the groundhog day, no matter what job we're in, we always want that reward, which is spending time with loved ones or family or going on a holiday. I know that was for me, but I think now we've got this different type of reward, which is in that humanitarian service side of things, where we still can contribute to the community and we can help. And that's where I feel so much for people who are missing out on that reward at the moment. There just seems to be no reward for effort through these relentless lockdowns. And so it's really hard to stay positive. But I think for us as allied health professionals in a service-driven industry, we still have the ability to help. And I think that's what a lot of us are really grateful for. at the moment. It's nice to hear about your journey and how it's changing and all that sort of, I guess, vision for the future. But with that mind-body unconnection, now that we're drawing to a bit of a close, is there anything that hasn't come up that you wanted to extend on, or anything that you want to say to our audience before we leave you? The takeaway messages that you want people to walk away with after today, with a little bit more thought into this unbodied connection, the language and the words that we're using. What do you want to say as we draw a close?
I think we've covered a wonderful range of topics. I'd be encouraging people as a final note, because I've found myself do it recently. It's all too easy to say the pain's in their head, or they're just worried, or they're just anxious, or they're just a tense person, or to be dismissive. And I think sometimes we do it in those situations where we feel as though we don't have the ability to help someone. And instead of us feeling inadequate or incapable of helping another person, we just put them in the too hard basket. So I think we need to mind ourselves in that we could be dismissive of someone who's going through a difficult or an unusual situation. And one example would probably be good to finish on, actually. So about 20 months ago, a gentleman had his voice box removed by a surgical procedure to cut some cancer out. He now speaks and breathes through a hole in his throat. And he was discharged quite hastily from the hospital and didn't have access to outpatient services through the hospital, because they were concerned that he was immunocompromised and therefore a high COVID risk, and they didn't want to expose him to COVID, which meant he didn't get the follow-up care he needed. I knew nothing about his condition and nothing about his lymphedema or the intense neck pain and the airway clearance issues that he was having, aside from what I'd learned at uni about those things. So when his wife called up and said, we need someone who's happy to see him, we thought, all right, well, we're just going to have to learn. So we hit the books, and together with some students, we learned a lot, and been able to help this man in numerous ways. So if the final encouragement is anything, I'd like it to be just don't put people in too hard basket. Don't dismiss it as a mind thing or a body thing. Just see the person and help them.
Yeah, it's really nice. So remove our biases, don't make assumptions, and realize that even if we're not present, the person in front of us certainly is, and they're listening to our words and our language. So thank you so much for sharing that. I have a new word and a new term, anti-fragility, which I am going to embrace moving forward, because I do love that concept. And I think there's a lot of people out there that will resonate with that terminology and will go back to that resource that you mentioned. And I might even get you to add in the comments a couple of those books that you mentioned, because there's some people out there right now in lockdown looking for some great resources to come back to.
Yeah.
So how can people find out more about you? I mean, I know you're working at the universities, and I know you've got your exercise thought practice over there in Lilydale in Victoria, but if people want to connect with you, how do they find you?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Exercise thought physiotherapy should pop up in Google if you type it in. If you search for Sam Suke, you'll probably find me as well. You can give me a call. My number is 0412 590 894. I don't mind. Just call me too much, I'll probably not answer. We'd love to chat, love to share those books, and please send through your questions and your thoughts and your jokes if you got them. Would love to connect.
Amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time out. It's been a very thought-provoking hour for our audience back at home, and another final good luck for the Allied Health Awards coming up. We can certainly see why you're a finalist, and you are so open to sharing your knowledge and your passion, and it's clearly evident in everything that you're doing, not only for your business but for the community and for the wider physiotherapy community. So thank you so much, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Jade, and thanks for all that you continue to do for our health professions and our communities.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Yeah.